Good morning, dear children. Welcome back. In today's session, we are going to continue our discussion of Class 8, Unit 1 in Social Science History, Advent of Europeans. This is part 3 of the videos. Come, children, let us learn. Before going into today's session, let us have a recap of what we learned in the last ones. Many of the foreign travelers, traders, missionaries and civil servants who came to India in 18th and 19th centuries have left accounts of their experiences and their impressions of various parts of our country. The sources for the history of modern India help us to know the political, socio-economic and cultural developments in the country. Dear children, from the beginning, Portuguese, Dutch, French, Danes and the English recorded their official transactions in India on state papers. The archives at Lisbon, Goa, Pondicherry and Madras were literally storehouses of precious historical information. All these sources must be critically evaluated before they are used for historical writing. We can write history with the help of sources like written sources and material sources. The advent of printing press, numerous books were published after it in different languages. Hence, people began to acquire knowledge easily in the fields like art, literature, history, and science. The Europeans came to know about the immense wealth of India from the accounts of Marco Polo and similar sources, and they were attracted to this country. Coming to the sources in Tamil archives, Anandarangam is a named Kanja with the annals of Tamil history. He was a Dubash in Pondicherry to assist French trade in India. His diaries contain diary events from 1736 to 1760, which are the only written secular record available during that period. The written sources include literatures, travel accounts, diaries, autobiographies, pamphlets, government documents, and manuscripts. We also learned about archives. This is the place where historical documents are preserved. The National Archives of India is located in New Delhi. It is a chief storehouse of the records of the Government of India. The archives contain authentic evidence for knowing the political, social, economic, cultural, and scientific life and activities of the people of India. George William Forrest can be rightly called as the father of the National Archives of India. We also learned about Tamilnadu archives. The Madras Record Office, presently known as the Tamilnadu Archives or TNA, is located in Chennai. It is one of the oldest and largest document repositories in southern India. The collections include series of administrative records in Dutch, Danish, Persian, Marathi, French, Portugal, Tamil and Urdu. The collection includes a series of administrative records in Dutch, Danish, Persian, Marathi, French, Portuguese, Tamil, Urdu apart from English. The Tamil Nadu Archives has 1642 volumes of Dutch records which relate to Cochin and Coromandel Coast. Dodwell prepared with great effort, and the first issue of the Calendar of Madras Records was published in 1917. He opened a new chapter in the history of Tamil Nadu archives. Dear children, many paintings and statues are the main source of modern Indian history. They give us a lot of information of the achievements of national leaders and historical personalities. Buildings like St. Francis Church at Cochin, St. Louis Fort at Pondicherry, St. George Fort in Madras, St. David Fort in Kadlur, buildings like India Gate, Parliament House, President House in New Delhi are different styles and techniques of Indian architecture. Other objects and materials of religious, cultural, and historical value are collected and preserved in museums. The National Museum in Delhi is the largest museum in India, which was established in 1949. Coins are also a good source to know about the administrative history. The first coinage in modern India was under the crown, was issued in 1862. Edward VII ascended after Queen Victoria, and the coins issued by him bore his model. The Reserve Bank of India was formally set up in 1935 and was empowered to issue Government of India notes. The first paper currency issued by RBI in January 1938 was a 5 rupee note bearing the portrait of King George VI. Dear children, in this session we will discuss about the advent of Europeans, mainly Portugal. Let me give you an introduction, dear children. The Ottoman Empire was a state that controlled much of the southeastern Europe, Western Asia, and northern Africa between the 14th and early 20th centuries. The capture of Constantinople, a city which marked the divide between Europe and Asia Minor, allowed the Ottomans to more effectively invade mainland and Europe, eventually leading to Ottoman control of much of the Balkan Peninsula. The city fell on 29 May 1453, the culmination of a 53-day siege which had begun on April 6, 1453. After the Ottoman capture of the city in 1453, the security that came with it, economic activity revived the Constantinopolitan and what were now Turkish possessions. The problem was the Black Sea trade crashed as the Ottomans started a monopoly for trade, and it hurt the regions of Europe's in trade. The Ottoman conquest affected the highly lucrative Italian trade and gradually reduced trade bases in the region. So children, after the capture of Constantinople by the Turks in AD Common Era 1453, the land route between India and Europe was closed. Learn the spelling Constantinople. 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 So, the trade route between India and Europe were closed. So, dear children, the land route of trade between India and Europe was closed because the Constantinople was captured by the Turks. The Turks penetrated into North Africa and the Balkan Peninsula. Dear children, in 1453, the Ottomans conquered the Christian city of Constantinople and renamed it Istanbul. They gradually built up a strong empire around Turkey, the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and North America and North Africa, and ruled over about 25 million people. The Islamic world was far more advanced in learning than the European at that time. So it became imperative on the part of the European nations to discover a new sea route to the east. So it was very essential for the European nations to find a new route. The land route was closed, it was not feasible. So they wanted to have a new route via sea to the eastern part of the world. Dear children, now let us learn about the European country Portugal's interest in India. The Portuguese Prince Henry the Navigator launched the first great European voyages of exploration. He was himself an explorer and he had kept an exploration. He sought new lands and sources of revenue for his kingdom and dynasty and searched for Eastern Christian allies against Islam. Under his patronage, Portuguese crews founded the country's first colonies and visited regions previously unknown to the Europeans. He is regarded as the originator of the Age of Discovery and the Atlantic enslaved people trade. He was himself a traveler, a sailor. He encouraged exploration in the early 15th century. He did the organizations that was needed for long voyages to succeed. He procured new caravel ship and was responsible for the early development of Portuguese exploration and maritime trade with other continents through the systematic exploration of Western Africa, islands of Atlantic Ocean, and for the search for new routes. So, dear children, amongst the entire European nations, Portugal was the foremost to make a dynamic attempt to discover a sea route to India. Prince Henry of Portugal, who is commonly known as a navigator, encouraged his countrymen to take up the adventurous life of exploring the unknown regions of the world. So he was very much interested in navigation, and he himself was called as a navigator. Prince Henry of Portugal was called as a navigator because he encouraged the people to take up adventurous life of exploring the unknown parts of the world. Dear children, another person of interest is Bartholomew Dias, Bartholomew. Bartholomew Dias, Diaz, was a Portuguese sailor and navigator whose discovery in 1488 of the Cape of Good Hope showed the Europeans that there was a feasible route to India around the storm-driven southern tip of Africa. That was a major maritime victory for Portugal. Dias' breakthrough opened the door to increased trade with India and other Asian powers. So, my dear children, Bartholomew Dias, a Portuguese sailor, reached the southernmost point of Africa in 1487. That is the Cape of Good Hope. He was patronized by the King John II. So King John II was also very much supportive of his voyages. Dear children, now let us learn about another explorer, Portuguese explorer, Vasco da Gama. He was the first explorer or Portuguese explorer and the first European to reach India by sea. His initial voyage to India was the first to link Europe by Asia by an ocean route connecting the Atlantic and the Indian Oceans, and therefore the West and the Orient. So children, he was the first European to sail from Europe to India by rounding Africa's Cape of Good Hope. He made 2 voyages beginning in 1497 and 1502. Vasco da Gama landed and traded in locals along the coast of southern Africa before reaching India on May 20th, 1498. His fleet arrived in Kapada near Kozhikode in Malabar coast, that is present-day Kerala state in India. His discovery was a monumental one in the history of navigation as well as instrumental in establishing Portugal as a major colonial empire. So dear children, Vasco da Gama, another Portuguese sailor, reached the southernmost point of Africa and he continued his journey to Mozambique, from where he sailed to India with the help of an Indian pilot. In AD Common Era 1498, he reached Calicut, cordially received King Zamarin the rule of Calicut. So Vasco da Gama also sailed past Africa and he continued his journey to Mozambique. From there, with the help of an Indian pilot, he reached Calicut and he was cordially received by the King Zamarin, the ruler of Calicut. The map shows his voyage from Lisbon to Calicut. That is the first European to reach India via Atlantic Ocean. He is coming from Portugal, Lisbon in Portugal, crossing the Atlantic Ocean, and he is reaching the Calicut. He sailed from Lisbon, Portugal in July 1497 and he came round the Cape of Good Hope and anchored at Malindi. You can see there Malindi in Mozambique on the east coast of Africa. Dear children, what you see is the voyage of Vasco da Gama. That is, he sailed from Lisbon in Portugal in July 1497 and he crossed the Atlantic Ocean and he came rounded the Cape of Good Hope, that is the tip of Africa, and anchored at Malindi on the east coast of Africa. With the help of a Gujarati pilot who knew the route to Calicut on the southwest coast of India, after a 23-day run across the Indian Ocean, the Ghat Mountains of India were sighted and Calicut was reached on May 20th. Dear children, a second Portuguese navigator, Pedro Alvares Cabral, Pedro, Pedro Alvarez, Alvarez, Alvarez Cabral, 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 sailed towards India following the route discovered by Vasco da Gama with 13 ships and few hundred soldiers in 1500. Unfortunately, on his arrival at Calicut, there arose conflicts between Portuguese and King Samacheer. Pedro is credited with the discovery of Brazil. It was on his way to India. On his voyage to India, he discovered Brazil. He reached India on 13th September 1500 in Calicut and opens the first European factory in India. Dear children, what you see on the map is the European trade centers. You can see the Portuguese settlements, which is green in color, the French settlements, which is red, and the Dutch settlements, which is in pink color, the Danish settlements in black, and English settlements in blue. You can find the Nagapattinam, which was Dutch settlements, and Pulicat. Madras was an English settlement. Dear children, after Pedro's visit with 13 ships, the third fleet of ship was fitted out in Lisbon. The commander was none other than Vasco da Gama. He reached Goa before proceeding to Cananore, which is north of Calicut. Gama formed an alliance with the ruler of Cananore and enemy of Samacheer, and the fleet sailed to Calicut with the aim of wrecking its trade and punishing the Samacheer. They sailed south of the port to Cochin, whose ruler was the enemy of Samacheer, and they formed an alliance. So children, Vasco da Gama came to India for the second time in 1501 with 20 ships and founded a trading center at Cananore. Cananore, Cananore. One after the other, they established factories at Calicut and Cochin. The King Samacheer attacked the Portuguese in Cochin but was defeated. Cochin was the first capital of Portuguese East India Company. The third voyage of Vasco da Gama was in 1524. He soon fell ill and in December 1524 he died in Cochin. His body was buried in Church of St. Francis at Kochi, but after 14 years his remains were moved to Lisbon. Dear children, now let us learn a little bit about Francisco de Almeida. Francisco, Francisco D Almeida, Almeida. On 25th March 1505, Francisco Almeida was appointed Viceroy of India on the condition that he would set up 4 forts on the southwestern Indian coast at Anjivida Island, Cananore, Cochin and Coilon. He left Portugal with a fleet of 22 vessels and 1,500 men. He helped the Portuguese forces defeat the ruler of Calicut. Dear children, in 1505, Francisco de Almeida was sent as the first governor of the Portuguese possessions in India. He was the first governor. Almeida had the aim of developing the naval power of the Portuguese in India, and his policy was known as the Blue Water Policy. That is, Francisco de Almeida, the Viceroy, wanted the supremacy of Portuguese over the sea. He didn't want the Portuguese possession in India, but in a territorial empire, but wanted that Portuguese should maintain supremacy on sea and confine their activities to purely commercial transactions. And this was known as a Blue Water Policy. That is, Blue Water Policy was to be powerful at the sea instead of building fortresses on the Indian land. They wanted to establish Portugal as a powerful country in the maritime region. As Portuguese tried to break the Arabs' monopoly on Indian Ocean trade, it negatively impacted on the trade interest of Egypt and Turkey. Since they wanted to establish a monopoly of Indian Ocean trade, it impacted the trade interest of Egypt and Turkey. Dear children, The Arabs completely controlled trade over the Indian Ocean during that period when Portuguese wanted to break the monopoly. It indirectly spoiled the interest of Egypt and Turkey. The sultans of Bijapur and Gujarat were worried about the Portuguese aggression on ports located on the west coast. So they made coalitions with Turkey and Egypt to fight against the Portuguese. Their combined naval force won a battle against the Portuguese near Chaul. In 1509, there was a battle in Diu between the coalition fleet and Portuguese fleet headed by Francisco de Almeida. Portuguese won the battle and claimed naval superpower in Asia. So, dear children, sultans of Bijapur and Gujarat were also apprehensive of the expansion of Portuguese control of ports, which led to an alliance between Egypt, Turkey, and Gujarat against Portuguese invaders. So, they had an alliance with Egypt, Turkey. In a naval battle fought near Chaul, the combined Muslim fleet won a victory over the Portuguese fleet under Almeida's son, who was killed in the battle. Dear children, the Battle of Chaul was a naval battle between the Portuguese and an Egyptian Mamluk fleet in 1508 in the harbour of Chaul in India. It ended in Mamluk victory. The Portuguese, led by the son of Viceroy Francisco de Almeida, were inferior in number with only a light force and located in the nearby harbour of Chaul. The rest had sailed north to protect shipping and fight piracy. The Mamluks sailed into Chaul and fought for 2 days. The Portuguese was unable to board their ships. The Portuguese had to retreat and Almeida's ship was sunk at the entrance of Chaul harbour with Almeida aboard. Dear children, now let us know a little bit about the Battle of Diu, which was a culmination of global trade war. On one side was the allied force of Sultanate of Gujarat, Zamrin of Calicut, the Egyptians and the Venetians. On the other side, the Portuguese. The victory of Portuguese in this naval battle put an end to the old trading giants and led to the centuries of European naval and trade dominance that shaped the modern world. This battle, children, marked a shift in power and the beginning of the dominance of the Europeans, first the Portuguese, then the Dutch, and then the French and the British over the world seas. Almeida defeated the combined Muslim fleet in a naval battle near Diu, and by the year 1509, Portuguese claimed the naval supremacy in Asia. Now let us learn a little bit about Alfonso de Albuquerque. Alfonso, A-L-F-O-N-S-O, Alfonso de Albuquerque, A-L-B-U-Q-U-E-R-Q-U-E. Dear children, King Manuel appointed Albuquerque to succeed Almeida at the end of his term. When he reached India in December 1508, Almeida had crushed the sea force of Calicut, but a navy from Egypt had defeated and killed his son. Insisting on retaining power until he has avenged his son's death, to avoid the interference, he had Albuquerque imprisoned. It was only after the arrival of fleet from Portugal that he was finally turned his office over to Albuquerque. Albuquerque's plan was to assume active control over the main maritime trade routes of the East and to establish permanent fortresses with settled populations. So, dear children, the real founder of Portuguese power in India was Alfonso de Albuquerque. He captured Goa from the Sultan of Bijapur in November 1510. In 1515, he established the Portuguese authority over Ormuz in Persian Gulf. He encouraged marriages of the Portuguese with Indian women so that he could have settlements here. He maintained friendly relations with Vijayanagar Empire. Now let us learn about Nino de Cunha. N-I-N-O-D-E-C-U-N-H-A. Nino de Cunha. He was a governor from 1529 to 1538. He ruled for 9 years. He moved the capital from Cochin to Goa in 1530. And in 1534, he acquired Bassein from Bahadur Shah of Gujarat. So in 1534, he acquired Bassein. In 1537, the Portuguese occupied Diu. Later, they wrested Daman from the local chiefs of Gujarat. In 1548, they occupied Salsette. Thus, during the 16th century, Portuguese succeeded in capturing Goa, Daman, Diu, Salsette, Bassein, Chaul and Bombay on the west coast, Hooghly on the Bengal coast and Santom on the Madras coast, and enjoyed good trade benefits. So he was a man who was behind all these acquisitions. That is, the Portuguese were able to acquire Goa, Daman, Diu, Salsette, Bassein, Chaul and Bombay on the western coast, and Hooghly on the Bengal coast and Santom on the Madras coast. And all these gave them good trade benefits. Now we will see the impact of Portuguese. The Portuguese brought the cultivation of tobacco to India. They introduced the cultivation of tobacco. Due to the influence of Portuguese, Catholic religion spread in certain regions of India's western and eastern coast. They spread the Catholic religion. The printing press was set up by the Portuguese at Goa in 1556. A scientific work on the Indian medical plants by a European writer was printed at Goa in 1563. In the 17th century, the Portuguese power began to decline to Dutch, and by 1739, the Portuguese pockets became confined just to Goa, Diu and Daman. Time to wind up the session. Before winding up, let us have a recap. The land route between India and Europe was closed in AD Common Era 1453 when the Turks captured Constantinople. The Turks penetrated into North Africa and Balkan Peninsula, and this made it imperative for the European nations to discover a new sea route to the east. Portugal was the first among the European nations to make a dynamic attempt to discover a sea route to India. Vasco da Gama, Portuguese sailor, reached the southernmost point of Africa, and in AD Common Era 1498 he reached Calicut. He was followed by Pedro Alvarez Cabral. 1505, Francisco de Almeida was sent as the first governor of the Portuguese possessions in India. He was known for his blue water policy. The real founder of Portuguese power in India was Alfonso de Albuquerque. He captured Goa from the Sultan of Bijapur and established Portuguese authority over Ormuz in Persian Gulf. Governor Nino de Cunha moved the capital from Cochin to Goa and established the Portuguese supremacy. Portuguese succeeded in capturing Goa, Daman, Diu, Salsette, Bassein, Chaul and Mumbai, and Hooghly and Santom on the Madras coast. They introduced the cultivation of tobacco and built and spread the Catholic religion. And by 17th century, the Portuguese power began to decline. Dear children, in the next session, we will discuss about the advent of Dutch. That's all for today's session, my dear children. Hope you enjoyed this video. For more videos, you could always subscribe our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Samacheer Kalvi Guide.